What if I told you that a Harvard janitor with a mop and bucket was actually one of the most qualified child development experts in the country? You're a janitor. You have no business interacting with students. Dr. Sterling screamed, her voice echoing through the marble hallways as she discovered Maya feeding lunch to the principal's blind son. But what this arrogant department head didn't know would soon shake the entire university to its core. Maya Johnson wasn't just any cleaning lady, she was a former PhD professor whose brilliant career had been destroyed by racist colleagues, forcing her into invisible work just to survive. Now, as she helped young Timothy in ways no one else could, the truth was about to explode in the most dramatic way possible. Don't miss this incredible story of hidden genius, shocking revelations, and ultimate justice. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The clock struck 5:30 a.m. as Maya Johnson pushed her cleaning cart down the polished marble hallway of Harvard's prestigious education building. Her worn sneakers squeaked softly against the floor, the only sound breaking the early morning silence. At 42, Maya had perfected the art of invisibility, moving through these hallowed halls like a ghost, unnoticed by the brilliant minds who would soon fill these spaces. She entered Professor Crawford's classroom, her trained eyes immediately assessing the mess left from yesterday's graduate seminar. Research papers scattered across desks, coffee stains on the mahogany conference table, and chalk dust coating every surface. Maya began her methodical routine, carefully organizing the scattered documents before wiping down surfaces. Foundations of Childhood Development Theory, she read silently from one paper's header. Despite herself, Maya found her eyes scanning the students' arguments about cognitive development in early learning environments. The research was flawed, missing critical connections between environmental factors and neuroplasticity that could have strengthened the entire thesis. What are you doing? Dr. Victoria Sterling's sharp voice cut through the morning quiet like a blade. Maya looked up, startled. The department head of education stood in the doorway, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, designer glasses perched on her nose like a weapon. Everything about Dr. Sterling screamed privilege and power. Just cleaning, ma'am, Maya replied quietly, immediately lowering her gaze. Were you reading those papers? Dr. Sterling's tone dripped with disdain as she marched into the room. Those are confidential research documents, not entertainment for the cleaning staff. I was just organizing them so they wouldn't get damaged while I don't. Dr. Sterling held up a manicured hand. Whatever you think you understand about those papers, you don't. These are complex academic theories far beyond your comprehension. Your job is to clean, not to think. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. Yes, ma'am. Professor Crawford appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Problems, Victoria? Just reminding the help about boundaries, Dr. Sterling replied coldly. Apparently, some people need constant reminders about their place. Crawford chuckled, shaking his head as he looked at Maya with undisguised contempt. Unbelievable. Next, she'll be trying to join our faculty meetings. Both professors laughed as they walked away, their voices echoing down the hallway. Maya stood frozen, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her cleaning cloth. If only they knew, she thought bitterly. If only they knew she had once sat in rooms just like this one, leading discussions about child psychology, publishing research that had influenced educational policy across 3 states. If only they knew that Dr. Maya Johnson had been destroyed by people exactly like them. But they would never know. In their eyes, she was just another invisible black woman pushing a mop, unworthy of consideration or respect. Maya returned to her work, each swipe of her cloth erasing not just dust, but a little more of who she used to be. Dr. Richard Whitmore sat behind his imposing oak desk, staring at the morning sunlight streaming through his office windows. The Harvard seal gleamed from every surface of his corner office, yet he felt anything but triumphant. His phone had been buzzing relentlessly with calls he didn't want to answer. Timothy, please eat something, he said softly to his 12-year-old son, who sat rigidly in the leather chair across from him. Timothy Whitmore was a beautiful child despite his circumstances. His dark hair fell across his face, partially hiding the unfocused brown eyes that had been blind since birth. His small hands gripped the armrests of the chair, knuckles white with tension. "I don't want to," Timothy whispered, his voice barely audible. Richard's heart broke a little more. Since his wife's death 3 years ago, Timothy had retreated further into himself. The boy who once filled their home with laughter had become a silent shadow, and Richard felt helpless to reach him. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts. Mrs. Eleanor Pemberton, the school's most influential board member, entered without waiting for permission. Her Chanel suit and pearl necklace announced her wealth before she even spoke. "Richard, we need to discuss the situation," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "What situation?" Richard asked, though he already knew. "Your son." She glanced at Timothy with barely concealed disapproval. "The board has been receiving concerns from faculty and parents. Having a disabled child on campus creates liability issues. And frankly, his outbursts are disruptive." Richard felt his blood pressure rising. "Timothy has every right to be here. I'm his father, and this is my workplace." "But it's not his place," Mrs. Pemberton replied coldly. "Harvard's image is built on excellence, achievement, and normalcy. Your son's condition reflects poorly on our institution's reputation." Timothy's breathing became rapid and shallow. He began rocking slightly in his chair, a sign Richard recognized as the beginning of one of his episodes. "Please lower your voice," Richard whispered urgently. "You're upsetting him." "See?" Mrs. Pemberton gestured dismissively. "This is exactly what I mean. We can't have scenes like this around potential donors or visiting dignitaries. Timothy is not a scene. He's my son. Then perhaps you should consider alternative arrangements. There are facilities that specialize in children with his limitations." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. "Get out," he said quietly. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my office. Now." Mrs. Pemberton's eyes flashed dangerously. "You're making a mistake, Richard. The board won't tolerate this situation much longer." She swept from the office, slamming the door behind her. Timothy was now rocking more violently, soft whimpers escaping his lips. Richard rushed to his son's side, kneeling beside the chair. "It's okay, buddy. She's gone. You're safe." But even as he held his trembling son, Richard knew Mrs. Pemberton was right about one thing: this situation couldn't continue indefinitely. He was failing Timothy, failing as a father, and slowly losing the most important battle of his life. Timothy needed help that Richard couldn't provide, and time was running out. Maya was mopping the main hallway when she heard the commotion. A child's distressed voice echoed off the marble walls, growing louder and more panicked with each passing second. "I can't find it. I can't find the door." She looked up to see a young boy stumbling down the corridor, his hands outstretched, fingers desperately searching the walls. His face was streaked with tears, and his breathing came in short, terrified gasps. Maya immediately recognized the signs of a panic attack. Without thinking, she abandoned her mop and moved toward the child. "Hey there, sweetie," she said in a calm, gentle voice. "My name is Maya. Can you tell me your name?" The boy froze at the sound of her voice. "Timothy," he whispered. "I'm lost. Everything sounds the same, and I can't find my dad's office." Maya knelt down to his level, careful not to touch him without permission. "Timothy, you're okay. I know exactly where your dad's office is. Would you like me to help you get there?" You know where it is?" Timothy's voice held a note of hope. "Dr. Whitmore's office? 3rd floor, northeast corner." "Absolutely." Maya smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "But first, let's take some deep breaths together. Can you do that with me? She began breathing slowly and audibly, creating a rhythm for Timothy to follow. Gradually, his panic subsided. That's perfect, Maya encouraged. Now, would you like to hold my arm while we walk? I'll describe everything we pass so you know exactly where you are. Timothy nodded hesitantly and reached out. Maya guided his small hand to her elbow, then began walking slowly toward the elevator. We're passing the Dean's Portrait Gallery now, she narrated. There are 12 oil paintings of former deans, all looking very serious in their academic robes. Despite his distress, Timothy almost smiled. Do they really look serious? Incredibly serious. Like they're trying to solve the world's most difficult math problem, Maya replied, pleased to hear the tension leaving his voice. They had just reached the elevator when sharp footsteps clicked behind them. What is going on here? Dr. Sterling's voice cut through their peaceful moment like a knife. Maya turned to see the department head approaching with 2 other faculty members, her face twisted with outrage. I'm helping Timothy find his father's office, Maya explained simply. How dare you? Dr. Sterling's voice rose to near shouting level. How dare you put your hands on Dr. Whitmore's son? Timothy immediately began to tremble, pressing closer to Maya's side. Ma'am, he was having a panic attack, and I was just. You were overstepping your boundaries in the most egregious way possible. Dr. Sterling interrupted. You're a janitor. You have no business interacting with students, especially not the principal's child. Professor Crawford had joined the group, shaking his head in disgust. This is exactly the kind of behavior we can't tolerate. Who knows what her real motives were? Maya felt her face flush with anger. My motive was helping a scared child find his father. Don't you dare take that tone with us, Dr. Sterling snarled. You are an employee here, nothing more. Your job is to clean floors, not to touch children or pretend you're qualified to handle situations you couldn't possibly understand. Timothy was now shaking visibly, small whimpers escaping his lips as the adults' voices grew louder and more aggressive around him. Please, Maya said quietly, you're frightening him. I'm frightening him? Dr. Sterling laughed harshly. You're the stranger who grabbed him in a hallway. Security should be called immediately. That's not what happened, Maya protested, but her voice was drowned out by Dr. Sterling's continued tirade. This incident will be reported to Dr. Whitmore immediately. Your employment here is going to be reviewed, and I will personally ensure that appropriate action is taken. You have crossed a line that should never be crossed. Maya looked down at Timothy, who was now crying quietly, overwhelmed by the hostile environment the adults had created around him. Her heart broke for this child who had simply needed help and instead found himself at the center of an ugly confrontation. She had done nothing wrong, but she already knew that wouldn't matter. In their eyes, she was just an overreaching janitor who had dared to show compassion to a child in need. 3 days had passed since the hallway incident, and Maya couldn't stop thinking about Timothy. Despite Dr. Sterling's threats, she found herself looking for the boy during her daily rounds, worried about his well-being. She discovered him during lunch hour, sitting alone in a quiet corner of the library's reading room. He had a braille book open but wasn't reading, just running his fingers aimlessly across the pages. Maya approached carefully. Timothy. It's Maya, from the other day. His head lifted immediately. Maya. You're still here. I thought Dr. Sterling said. She said a lot of things, Maya replied softly. But I'm still here. Are you okay? You seem sad. Timothy's shoulders sagged. I don't like eating in the faculty dining room. Everyone stares at me and whispers. Dad tries to pretend he doesn't notice, but I can hear everything. Maya's heart ached for him. She glanced around the empty reading room, then made a decision that could cost her job. Would you like to eat lunch with me tomorrow? I know a quiet spot where we won't be bothered. The next day, Maya found Timothy waiting exactly where she told him. She had packed an extra sandwich and brought a thermos of homemade soup. "This smells amazing," Timothy said as she guided him to a small table in the building's seldom-used archive room. "My grandmother's recipe," Maya smiled. "She always said food tastes better when it's made with love." As Timothy ate, Maya began reading to him from a book she'd brought, not a children's story, but a fascinating account of Helen Keller's educational breakthroughs. She watched Timothy's face light up with interest. "She really learned to communicate without sight or hearing?" he asked, amazed. "She became one of the most influential women of her time," Maya confirmed. "And she had teachers who believed in her potential, not her limitations." Their lunch meetings became a secret routine. Maya would find Timothy, feed him nutritious meals, and engage his brilliant mind with stories of remarkable people who had overcome challenges. She taught him simple navigation techniques, helped him understand spatial relationships, and most importantly, listened to his thoughts without judgment. "Maya," Timothy asked one day, "you talk about learning differently than other adults. Were you a teacher?" Maya paused, her hand freezing over the book she'd been reading. "Why do you ask?" "You explain things the way teachers do in my special education books. And you know so much about how blind people learn." Marcus Williams, Maya's only friend among the janitorial staff, appeared in the doorway. He'd been covering for her absences during these lunch sessions. "Maya, you need to be careful," he whispered urgently after Timothy left. "Dr. Sterling's been asking questions about your whereabouts during lunch break." "I can't abandon him, Marcus. He's brilliant, but everyone treats him like he's broken. He just needs someone who understands." Marcus shook his head worriedly. "Girl, you're walking into a trap. That woman is looking for any reason to destroy you." But Maya couldn't stop. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again, like the educator she'd once been, the woman who had dedicated her life to helping children reach their potential. Timothy's progress was remarkable. His confidence grew daily, his panic attacks decreased, and his natural intelligence began to shine through the fear and sadness that had previously defined him. She was making a difference in a child's life, and that meant everything to her. Dr. Sterling had been planning this moment for weeks. She'd noticed the janitor's suspicious behavior, disappearing during lunch breaks, asking unusual questions about special educational resources, and worst of all, the way Timothy Whitmore had begun to seem happier. She positioned herself strategically near the archive room, waiting with Professor Crawford and 2 other faculty members as witnesses. When she heard voices inside, she struck. "I knew it." Dr. Sterling burst through the door, her voice echoing triumphantly off the walls. Maya and Timothy were seated at their usual table, a geography book open between them. Maya had been helping Timothy understand topographical maps through tactile learning methods. "Dr. Sterling," Maya began, but was immediately cut off. "Don't you dare try to explain this away," Dr. Sterling snarled. "I have caught you red-handed in the most inappropriate behavior imaginable." Timothy began to shake, confused and frightened by the sudden intrusion and aggressive tone. Professor Crawford entered behind Dr. Sterling, followed by 2 other faculty members. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "Just as you suspected, Victoria. This woman," Dr. Sterling announced dramatically, "has been secretly meeting with Dr. Whitmore's vulnerable son, isolating him from proper supervision, and engaging in completely unauthorized contact with a minor." "That's not what this is," Maya protested, standing protectively near Timothy. "I've been helping him with what?" Dr. Sterling's voice dripped with insinuation. "What could a janitor possibly offer a child that licensed professionals cannot?" "I was reading to him in grooming behavior," Professor Crawford declared with disgust. "Classic predatory pattern. Gain the child's trust through special attention in private meetings." Maya felt the walls closing in around her. "You're twisting this into something sick when it's nothing but kindness." "Kindness?" Dr. Sterling laughed coldly. "Is that what you call luring a blind child into secret meetings? filling his head with whatever manipulative nonsense serves your purposes. Timothy was now crying softly, overwhelmed by the hostile voices and accusations swirling around him. "Stop it," Maya said firmly. "You're terrifying him with these false accusations." "False?" Dr. Sterling's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "We have witnesses. We have proof of your inappropriate behavior. A grown woman secretly meeting with a 12-year-old boy, away from proper supervision, engaging in unauthorized contact despite explicit instructions to maintain professional boundaries. I've done nothing wrong. I've been helping a lonely child who needed. What he needs," Professor Crawford interrupted, "is protection from predators who abuse their position to gain access to vulnerable children." Dr. Sterling pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Dr. Whitmore immediately. This woman's employment will be terminated today, and I'll personally ensure that appropriate authorities are notified about her conduct." Maya's world began to crumble. She had survived professional destruction once before, but this accusation was different, darker and more devastating than anything she'd previously faced. "Please," she whispered, looking at Timothy's tear-streaked face. "Don't do this to him. He's innocent in all of this." "That's exactly why we're protecting him from you," Dr. Sterling replied coldly, already dialing Dr. Whitmore's number. Maya realized with growing horror that her simple act of compassion was about to be weaponized against both her and the child she'd only tried to help. That evening, Maya sat in the janitor's break room, staring at the termination notice that had been delivered to her locker. Her hands trembled as she read Dr. Sterling's formal accusations: inappropriate conduct with a minor, violation of professional boundaries, and potential predatory behavior. Marcus entered quietly, his face etched with concern. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you this would happen." "They're going to destroy me, Marcus," Maya whispered. "These accusations, they'll follow me everywhere. I'll never work around children again." "Maybe it's time you told someone the truth," Marcus said gently. "About who you really are." Maya laughed bitterly. "The truth? The truth is that I'm already a destroyed woman. This is just the second time they've succeeded in ruining my life." She pulled out a worn photograph from her wallet, a picture of herself at a university podium, accepting an award. Her smile was radiant, her future bright with promise. "I was Dr. Maya Johnson," she began quietly. "I had a PhD in educational psychology with a specialization in childhood development. I was a tenured professor at Riverside University, published researcher, consultant to school districts across 3 states. Marcus leaned forward, listening intently. "I developed innovative programs for children with learning disabilities. My work on sensory integration therapy helped hundreds of kids. I was nominated for the National Education Excellence Award." Maya's voice grew stronger as she remembered who she used to be. "What happened?" Marcus asked softly. "Dr. Richard Hartwell happened. Senior faculty member, 20 years my senior, and a racist who couldn't stand that a young black woman was gaining recognition he thought belonged to him." Maya's eyes hardened. "He began questioning my research methods, spreading rumors about my competence, undermining my credibility at every opportunity." The door opened, and Sarah Chen, a graduate student Maya had seen occasionally in the halls, stepped inside. She paused, seeing Maya's distressed state. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," Sarah said, but Maya gestured for her to stay. "It's fine. I was just telling Marcus about my former life as a human being." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're Dr. Maya Johnson. The Dr. Johnson who wrote Breakthrough Methods in Special Education?" Maya stared at her in shock. "You know my work?" "Know it? Your research on tactile learning methods for visually impaired children is referenced in half my coursework. Your techniques revolutionized how we approach sensory-based education." Maya felt tears welling up. Someone remembered her contributions, her life's work. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, confused. "Dr. Hartwell accused me of falsifying research data," Maya continued her story. He claimed I was manipulating results to support my theories. The university launched an investigation that lasted 8 months. Even though I was eventually cleared of all charges, the damage was done. My reputation was destroyed, my research funding pulled, my position eliminated due to budget constraints. Marcus shook his head in disgust. Same old story. Tear down the black woman who threatens their power structure. I lost everything, Maya continued. My career, my home, my savings went to legal fees. I ended up here, grateful for any job that would pay the bills. And now. She held up the termination notice. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then spoke decisively. We can't let them do this to you again. There's nothing anyone can do, Maya replied hopelessly. There is, Sarah said firmly. Your work with Timothy, I've been watching from a distance. What you've accomplished with that boy in just a few weeks is remarkable. He's more confident, more engaged, happier than I've ever seen him. That won't matter to Dr. Sterling or the administration. Maybe not to them, Sarah agreed. But it might matter to Dr. Whitmore. And it definitely matters to the truth. Sarah pulled out her laptop. I'm going to research everything, your published papers, your awards, the investigation that cleared you. If we're going to fight this, we need ammunition. For the first time in hours, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to face this battle alone. Dr. Richard Whitmore stood outside his son's bedroom door, listening to the heartbreaking sounds coming from within. Timothy had been inconsolable for 3 days, ever since Dr. Sterling had informed him that Maya would no longer be working at the school. Timothy. Richard knocked gently. Can I come in? Go away. Timothy screamed, his voice raw from crying. You let them take Maya away. You let them hurt her. Richard's heart shattered a little more. In the 72 hours since Maya's termination, Timothy had regressed dramatically. The progress Richard had begun to notice, the increased confidence, the reduced anxiety, the spark of curiosity, had vanished completely. His phone buzzed with another message from Mrs. Pemberton. The situation is becoming unacceptable. The board demands immediate action. The morning brought no relief. Timothy refused to come to campus, barricading himself in his room and screaming if anyone tried to force him out. Richard had no choice but to call Dr. Amanda Foster, the child psychologist who had been working with Timothy for the past year. I don't understand what's changed, Dr. Foster admitted after a disastrous session where Timothy had thrown books and kicked over furniture. He was making subtle progress, and now he's completely shut down. He's been asking for someone named Maya, Richard explained, exhaustion clear in his voice. She was a janitor who apparently befriended him, but Dr. Sterling discovered inappropriate contact and, wait, Dr. Foster interrupted. Someone was working with Timothy outside of our sessions. According to Dr. Sterling, this woman was meeting with him secretly, which raises serious concerns about. No, Dr. Whitmore, Dr. Foster said firmly. What raises serious concerns is Timothy's regression. In my professional opinion, someone was helping your son, and removing that person has caused this crisis. That afternoon brought the worst incident yet. Timothy had a complete meltdown in the faculty dining room, screaming and thrashing so violently that campus security had to be called. Students stared in shock as the principal's son was carried from the building, his anguished cries echoing through the halls. This cannot continue, Mrs. Pemberton cornered Richard after the incident. The board is prepared to vote on your position if you cannot control this situation. Richard felt utterly defeated. Professional consultants had failed, medications weren't helping, and traditional therapy sessions only seemed to make Timothy more agitated. Yet somehow, a janitor had reached his son in ways no one else could. That evening, as he sat beside Timothy's bed watching his son sleep fitfully, Richard made a decision. He needed to understand what had happened between Maya and Timothy. Not Dr. Sterling's version of events, but the truth. He thought about the timing. Timothy's improvement had begun around the same time Maya would have started working their floor. The correlation was impossible to ignore. Maybe, Richard whispered to his sleeping son, I've been listening to the wrong people. For the first time since Maya's termination, Richard began to question whether Dr. Sterling's accusations told the whole story. His son's desperate regression suggested that something far more complex and important had been lost. Tomorrow, he would start looking for answers. Sarah Chen found Maya sitting alone in the small public library 3 blocks from Harvard campus. Maya had been coming here every day since her termination, unable to bear staying home with her crushing thoughts. I've been looking for you, Sarah said softly, sliding into the chair across from Maya. Maya looked up, surprised. You shouldn't be seen with me. It could hurt your academic standing. My academic standing isn't worth protecting if it means staying silent about injustice, Sarah replied firmly. She opened her laptop and turned it toward Maya. I've spent the last week researching everything I could find about your work. The screen displayed a comprehensive timeline of Maya's career achievements. Published papers, awards, conference presentations, and glowing reviews from colleagues and students alike. 43 peer-reviewed publications, Sarah read aloud. Innovation Award from the American Educational Psychology Association, 2018. Your research on sensory integration therapy has been cited over 300 times in academic literature. Maya stared at the screen, seeing her professional life laid out like evidence of a person who no longer existed. But this is the most important thing I found, Sarah continued, clicking to a new screen. Your doctoral dissertation, Revolutionary Approaches to Education for Visually Impaired Children, a comprehensive study of tactile learning methods. Maya's breath caught. How did you? University archives. Maya, your entire career was built around helping children exactly like Timothy. You're not just qualified to work with him, you're probably one of the most qualified people in the country. Sarah pulled up another document. I also found the investigation records from Riverside University. Dr. Hartwell's accusations were completely fabricated. The investigative committee not only cleared you of all charges but censured him for academic misconduct. That doesn't matter now, Maya said bitterly. The damage was done then, and it's being done again now. It matters because Timothy is suffering, Sarah said passionately. I've been observing him around campus, and his regression is heartbreaking. Whatever you were doing with him was working. Maya felt tears threatening again. I was just being kind to a lonely child. No, you were being a gifted educator working with a child who desperately needed your specific expertise, Sarah corrected. Your techniques, your understanding of his needs, your specialized knowledge, that's what made the difference. Sarah opened another file. I've documented everything I could observe about Timothy's transformation during the weeks you were helping him. Increased confidence, improved spatial awareness, better emotional regulation, enhanced communication skills. Maya, you weren't just feeding him lunch, you were providing specialized intervention that no one else here is qualified to deliver. Dr. Sterling will never admit she was wrong, Maya replied hopelessly. Maybe not, but Dr. Whitmore might listen to evidence. Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. His son is clearly in crisis without your help. As a father, he has to want answers. Sarah leaned forward intensely. There's something else. I think Dr. Sterling knows exactly who you are. Maya's head snapped up. What do you mean? I mean someone with her background in education would recognize your research if she'd ever seriously studied childhood development. Your work is groundbreaking, it's impossible she hasn't encountered it. Sarah's voice grew angry. I think she knew from the beginning that you were overqualified for your position, and it threatened her. So she set out to destroy me again, Maya whispered, the pieces falling into place. The same way Dr. Hartwell did. Remove the brilliant black woman who makes everyone else look incompetent by comparison. Sarah's laptop showed Dr. Sterling's published work, sparse and unremarkable compared to Maya's extensive research. But here's what they didn't count on, Sarah continued. You've made a real difference in Timothy's life, and that kind of progress can't be hidden or explained away. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Sarah reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Will you let me help you fight this? Not just for your sake, but for Timothy's. He needs you, and you need to reclaim who you are. For the first time in days, Maya felt something other than despair. Looking at the evidence of her professional accomplishments, remembering the joy in Timothy's voice when he learned something new, she felt a familiar spark of determination. What did you have in mind? Maya asked quietly. Sarah smiled. We're going to show Dr. Whitmore exactly who Maya Johnson really is. Dr. Richard Whitmore had been searching the campus for an hour, desperate to find some clue about what had made such a difference in Timothy's life. His son's condition had deteriorated so rapidly that Dr. Foster was now recommending residential treatment, something Richard refused to consider. Following a hunch, he checked the archive room where Timothy had mentioned spending time during lunch. The room appeared empty, but voices drifted from behind the tall bookshelves. Remember, Timothy, the key is creating a mental map, a woman's voice said gently. When you enter a new space, identify 3 reference points: sounds, textures, or distinctive features. Richard froze. He recognized the voice from the hallway incident, but this time he heard something different in it: authority, expertise, genuine understanding. Like the grandfather clock in Dad's office? Timothy asked, his voice brighter than it had been in days. Exactly. That clock becomes your anchor point. From there, you can navigate the entire room safely. Curious, Richard moved quietly toward the voices and peered around the bookshelf. What he saw challenged everything he'd been told about Maya. The woman knelt at Timothy's level, guiding his hands over a tactile map she'd apparently created. Her movements were precise and purposeful, her techniques clearly professional rather than amateur. Now, let's practice the breathing exercise we learned, Maya continued. When you feel panic starting, remember the 4-count method. Timothy followed her instructions perfectly, his anxiety visibly diminishing as he practiced the coping technique. Richard watched in amazement as Maya pulled out what appeared to be professionally designed learning materials, not simple children's toys, but sophisticated educational tools specifically created for visually impaired students. Maya, why do you know so much about blind kids? Timothy asked innocently. Richard held his breath, waiting for the answer. Because, Maya said softly, I used to help children like you for a living. It was the most important work I ever did. Richard's mind reeled. This wasn't the picture Dr. Sterling had painted of an overeager janitor overstepping boundaries. This was clearly someone with extensive professional training working within her area of expertise. You were a teacher? Timothy asked. Something like that, Maya replied. I studied for many years to understand how children learn, especially children who see the world differently than others. Richard watched Maya guide Timothy through a spatial orientation exercise that he recognized from expensive therapy sessions they'd attended months earlier. But Maya's approach was more intuitive, more effective than anything the licensed professionals had attempted. Timothy, Maya said gently, I need to tell you something. I can't meet with you like this anymore. The school has decided it's not appropriate. Timothy's face crumpled. Because of what Dr. Sterling said. But you were helping me. I was getting better. I know, sweetheart. And you were doing amazingly well. But sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense to kids. Richard felt his chest tighten as he watched his son's distress. Will I ever see you again? Timothy whispered. Maya's voice broke slightly. I don't know. But I want you to remember everything we practiced. You're so much stronger and smarter than you realize. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. Timothy began to cry softly, and Maya held him gently, her own tears flowing freely. Richard stepped back, his mind racing. He had just witnessed the most effective therapeutic interaction he'd ever seen his son experience. Maya wasn't manipulating or grooming Timothy, she was providing exactly the kind of specialized intervention he desperately needed. Dr. Sterling's accusations suddenly seemed not just wrong, but deliberately malicious. For the first time since the termination, Richard began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake in trusting Dr. Sterling's version of events. The evidence before his eyes contradicted everything he'd been told. His son was losing the one person who had genuinely helped him, and Richard was beginning to suspect that this injustice was entirely his fault. The next morning, Dr. Richard Whitmore stood outside the small library where Sarah had told him he could find Maya. His hands shook slightly as he pushed open the door, knowing that this conversation would change everything. Maya looked up in surprise when she saw him approaching her table. Her expression immediately became guarded, and she began gathering her belongings to leave. "Please," Richard said quietly, "don't go. I need to talk to you." "Dr. Whitmore, I understand you have concerns about my interactions with Timothy, but I can assure you that I never did anything inappropriate." "I know," Richard interrupted. "I saw you with him yesterday." Maya froze, her face pale with worry. "I watched you work with my son," Richard continued, sitting across from her. "What I saw wasn't inappropriate contact. It was the most professional, effective therapeutic intervention Timothy has ever received." Maya stared at him in shock. "I've been an administrator for 15 years, Richard said. I've observed hundreds of teachers, therapists, and specialists working with children. What you were doing with Timothy, those weren't the techniques of an untrained person. Those were the methods of someone with extensive professional education." Sarah appeared at the table, laptop in hand. "Dr. Whitmore, I'm glad you're here. There are things you need to know about Maya." Sarah opened her laptop and turned it toward Richard. "Meet Dr. Maya Johnson, Ph.D. in Educational Psychology, specializing in childhood development and sensory integration therapy for visually impaired children." Richard's eyes widened as he scanned the impressive academic credentials displayed on the screen. 43 published papers, Sarah continued. Innovation awards, conference presentations, and a research career spanning 12 years before she was falsely accused of academic misconduct by a racist colleague and lost everything. "You're Dr. Johnson," Richard whispered, recognizing the name from Timothy's medical consultations. "Dr. Foster has referenced your research in our sessions. Your work on tactile learning methods," she said. "It was groundbreaking." Maya found her voice. "I developed those techniques specifically for children like Timothy. Everything I was doing with your son was based on years of research and clinical experience." Richard felt sick with realization. "Dr. Sterling knew, didn't she? She knew exactly who you were." "I believe so," Sarah answered. "Someone with her background would have encountered Maya's research. The accusations weren't made out of ignorance, they were made out of malice." Richard looked at Maya with new eyes. "You weren't overstepping boundaries. You were working within your area of expertise to help a child who desperately needed your specific skills." "All I wanted was to help Timothy feel less alone," Maya said softly. "When I saw him struggling, I couldn't just walk away." "And your help was working," Richard said firmly. "Timothy made more progress in the few weeks you were helping him than he had in months of professional therapy." Sarah pulled up another document. "I've documented Timothy's improvements during Maya's intervention period. The correlation between her involvement and his progress is undeniable." Richard ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the injustice. "I trusted Dr. Sterling's judgment. I allowed her to destroy your reputation based on lies and prejudice." "The same thing happened to me before," Maya replied. "People in power who feel threatened by competent black women often use false accusations to eliminate the threat." "This ends now," Richard said with quiet determination. "I won't allow ignorance and racism to destroy you twice, or to deprive my son of the help he needs." He looked directly at Maya. "I want to offer you a position at Harvard. A real position, matching your qualifications and expertise." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Dr. Whitmore, I'm creating a new position, Director of Special Educational Services. You would design and implement programs for students with learning differences, starting with Timothy but expanding to help other children who need specialized support. Sarah beamed with excitement, but Maya looked uncertain. After everything that's happened, why would you trust me with such responsibility? Maya asked. Because my son trusts you, Richard replied simply. And because competence, compassion, and integrity shouldn't be wasted due to other people's prejudices. For the first time since her termination, Maya allowed herself to hope that her professional life might be restored. Not just her job, but her identity as an educator who could make a real difference in children's lives. What about Dr. Sterling? Maya asked. Richard's expression hardened. Dr. Sterling will face the consequences of her actions. Academic misconduct, discrimination, and false accusations against a colleague will not be tolerated at this institution. Maya took a deep breath. Yes, Dr. Whitmore. I accept your offer. Dr. Richard Whitmore called an emergency faculty meeting for that afternoon, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument when he issued the invitations. The conference room filled with curious and concerned faculty members, including Dr. Sterling and Professor Crawford, who entered with smug confidence. I'm sure you're all wondering why I've called this meeting, Richard began, standing at the head of the long mahogany table. We need to address a serious situation involving academic misconduct, discrimination, and false accusations against a colleague. Dr. Sterling shifted uncomfortably but maintained her composed facade. 3 days ago, Dr. Victoria Sterling terminated a member of our staff based on allegations of inappropriate conduct with a minor, Richard continued. These allegations have been thoroughly investigated, and I've discovered that they were not only false but deliberately fabricated. Murmurs rippled through the room. Professor Crawford leaned forward, frowning. The staff member in question is Dr. Maya Johnson, Richard announced, and several faculty members gasped in recognition. Dr. Sterling's face went white. That's impossible. She's a janitor. No, Victoria, Richard said coldly. She's a PhD in educational psychology with 12 years of research experience and an international reputation in her field. The same Dr. Johnson whose work is cited in our own curriculum. Richard activated the room's projection system, displaying Maya's academic credentials for everyone to see. 43 peer-reviewed publications, he read aloud. Innovation Award from the American Educational Psychology Association. Her research on sensory integration therapy for visually impaired children has been referenced in over 300 academic papers worldwide. The room fell silent as faculty members stared at the impressive credentials. Professor Crawford found his voice first. But why was she working as a janitor? Because colleagues like you destroyed her career through false accusations of academic misconduct, Richard replied sharply. Dr. Johnson was cleared of all charges, but the damage to her reputation forced her into menial labor to survive. Dr. Sterling finally spoke, her voice shaking. I had no way of knowing. That's a lie, Richard interrupted. Someone with your background in education would absolutely recognize Dr. Johnson's research. You knew exactly who she was, and you saw her expertise as a threat to your own mediocre career. Sarah Chen entered the room, carrying a stack of documents. I have evidence, she announced. She distributed papers to the shocked faculty members. Email records showing Dr. Sterling researching Maya's background weeks before the accusations. Search histories on her computer revealing extensive knowledge of Maya's published work. She knew from the beginning that Maya was vastly overqualified. Professor Crawford stared at the evidence, his face flushing with embarrassment. Victoria, is this true? Dr. Sterling's composure cracked completely. She was just a janitor. She had no business interfering with what? Richard demanded. With helping a child using her professional expertise? With providing exactly the kind of specialized intervention that my son desperately needed? Mrs. Pemberton, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Are you telling us that this woman was actually qualified to help Timothy? More than qualified, Richard confirmed. She's probably one of the most qualified people in the country to work with children like my son. Her techniques were revolutionary, her approach was professional, and her results were remarkable. He faced Dr. Sterling directly. You destroyed the reputation of a brilliant educator twice. First through your silence when Dr. Hartwell's accusations were destroying her career, and now through your own false allegations. I don't know what you're talking about, Dr. Sterling protested weakly. Sarah held up another document. Email correspondence between you and Dr. Hartwell from 2 years ago, discussing ways to limit the influence of unqualified minority faculty in educational research. The room erupted in shocked voices. Several faculty members stared at Dr. Sterling with disgust and disbelief. This is a conspiracy of racist colleagues systematically destroying the career of a woman whose only crime was being more competent than they were, Richard declared. Mrs. Pemberton stood slowly. Dr. Sterling, your actions have brought shame to this institution. I move for your immediate resignation. Seconded, called several voices simultaneously. Dr. Sterling looked around the room at the faces filled with condemnation and realized her career at Harvard was over. Professor Crawford cleared his throat nervously. What happens now? Now, Richard said firmly, we try to repair some of the damage we've done. Dr. Johnson has accepted the position of Director of Special Educational Services. She'll be designing programs to help students with learning differences, starting immediately. The room buzzed with approval and excitement as faculty members realized they would be working with a renowned expert they had previously dismissed as invisible. 6 months later, Maya Johnson stood in her new office, sunlight streaming through large windows as she reviewed progress reports from the 12 students now enrolled in Harvard's innovative Special Educational Services program. Her nameplate read Dr. Maya Johnson, Director of Special Educational Services, and she still felt a thrill of pride every time she saw it. Timothy burst through her office door, his face glowing with excitement. Maya. I just finished reading the entire Braille version of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. That's wonderful, Timothy. Maya beamed, watching as the boy who had once been paralyzed by fear now navigated her office with complete confidence. What did you think of Tom's adventures? He was brave, but sometimes foolish, Timothy replied thoughtfully. Like when he got lost in the cave. But he never gave up, just like you taught me. Richard appeared in the doorway, smiling at the scene. The transformation in both his son and his institution had exceeded his wildest expectations. Dr. Johnson, the university regents want to discuss expanding your program to 3 other campuses, he announced. Your methods are gaining national attention. Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude. After years of invisibility and humiliation, she was not only restored to her profession but leading revolutionary changes in educational approaches. What happened to Dr. Sterling? Timothy asked innocently. She took a position at a small community college, Richard replied diplomatically. She's no longer involved in educational policy decisions. The truth was that Dr. Sterling had been forced to resign in disgrace, her discriminatory actions resulting in a formal reprimand that would follow her for the rest of her career. Professor Crawford had undergone sensitivity training and publicly apologized for his role in perpetuating bias against Maya. Maya, will you read with me this afternoon? Timothy asked. Of course, but let's make it interesting, Maya suggested. How about we practice reading that geography book for your presentation next week? Timothy nodded enthusiastically. The boy who had once been dismissed as too difficult to educate was now thriving academically, presenting research projects to his classmates and inspiring other children with disabilities. Marcus Williams knocked on the office door, grinning broadly. Dr. Johnson, there's a reporter here from the Education Journal. They want to interview you about the Harvard program. Maya laughed, remembering when Marcus was her only friend in the entire building. Now she supervised a team of specialists, consulted with universities nationwide, and had restored not just her own dignity but opened doors for other marginalized educators. Sarah Chen, now Maya's research assistant, poked her head in. The afternoon session with the new students is ready to begin. As Maya gathered her materials, she reflected on how completely her life had changed. From invisible janitor to respected director, from falsely accused to nationally recognized expert, from isolated and bitter to surrounded by colleagues who valued her contributions. Timothy took her arm as they walked toward the classroom. "Maya, I'm glad Dad found out who you really were." "Me too, sweetheart," Maya replied, her heart full. Sometimes the truth takes time to reveal itself, but it always finds a way. Through the classroom windows, she could see students with various learning differences engaged in activities she had designed specifically for their needs. Her program was creating opportunities for children who had previously been dismissed as unteachable. Dr. Richard Whitmore watched from his office window as Maya and Timothy walked together toward their afternoon session. His son was not just surviving but flourishing, and his institution had been transformed by recognizing the brilliance that had been hidden in plain sight. The invisible woman had become the most visible symbol of what was possible when talent was recognized regardless of the package it came in. Maya Johnson had reclaimed not just her career, but her identity as an educator who could change lives, including her own. Dear friend, this powerful story reminds us that brilliance exists in every corner of our society, often hidden behind assumptions and prejudices. How many talented individuals do we overlook simply because of their current circumstances, race, or position? Maya's journey shows us that everyone deserves to be seen for their true potential, not judged by appearances or stereotypes. In our daily lives, let's choose to look deeper, listen more carefully, and recognize that the person serving our coffee, cleaning our offices, or working quietly in the background might possess extraordinary gifts waiting to be discovered. Every human being has inherent worth and untapped potential. If this story touched your heart and opened your eyes, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can spread awareness about dignity, respect, and the incredible power of second chances.